My name is Scarlett, and at 34 years old, I never imagined I'd wake up in a hospital bed on Thanksgiving evening, completely alone. The steady beep of monitors replaced the laughter that should have filled my ears. Empty chairs sat where my family should have been waiting. I'd collapsed that morning while preparing the turkey I'd been cooking since dawn. But what the doctor discovered in my blood would expose years of carefully hidden family secrets. Before I share what happened that day, I'd love to know where you're watching from. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, please like and subscribe to hear how I finally found my voice. The alarm pierced through the darkness at 5 a.m. that Thanksgiving morning, just like it had for the past 20 years. I rolled out of bed in my childhood home, the same house where I'd taken over as the family caretaker after my mother passed away 10 years ago. The wooden floors creaked under my feet as I made my way to the kitchen, already mentally running through the extensive menu I'd been planning for weeks. My father Richard had built his real estate empire from this very house, turning our family name into something that commanded respect in our Connecticut community. 3 years ago, he'd remarried Catherine, a woman 15 years younger, who arrived with her own baggage in the form of her 31-year-old son Derek. My older sister Jennifer, now 37, lived just 10 minutes away with her husband Paul and their twin daughters, but somehow the responsibility of every family gathering still fell squarely on my shoulders. By 4:30, I'd already started the prep work. The 22-pound turkey sat on the counter waiting to be seasoned and stuffed. 3 different types of stuffing needed to be prepared, because heaven forbid anyone in our family could agree on just one. The cranberry sauce had to be made from scratch because Catherine insisted store-bought was beneath us. I moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, each motion perfected through years of repetition. At 7 a.m. sharp, Catherine glided into the kitchen wearing her silk robe, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her coffee cup. She surveyed my work with that familiar critical eye. "The turkey's too big, Scarlett. You know Derek prefers white meat, and this has far too much dark. And that seasoning blend is that paprika I smell. You know it gives me heartburn." I bit my tongue the way I always did and continued peeling potatoes. Derek appeared moments later, his hair still messy from sleep. He grabbed the coffee I just poured for myself and the leftover pie from the fridge, without a word disappearing back upstairs with both. This was our routine, me giving, and them taking a dance we'd perfected over the years. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Running late," she wrote, as if that was news. "Can you watch the twins when I get there? They're being impossible this morning." No question mark, just an assumption that I'd handle it the way I always handled everything. I climbed the stairs to bring my father his morning coffee, finding him already in his study surrounded by contracts and blueprints. His phone was pressed to his ear, discussing some development deal that apparently couldn't wait until after the holiday. When I set the coffee on his desk, he waved me away without looking up, as if I were one of his employees rather than his daughter. Back in the kitchen, I noticed my hands shaking as I returned to the potatoes. The knife slipped clattering onto the counter. Strange. I picked it up, gripping it tighter, but my fingers felt weak, almost numb. A wave of dizziness washed over me, forcing me to lean against the counter for support. The exhaustion made sense. I'd been working double shifts at the hospital all week, covering for nurses who wanted to travel for the holiday. But this felt different, heavier somehow. The knife slipped again, this time nicking my finger. I watched the blood bead up, mesmerized by how slowly my brain processed what had happened. Catherine chose that moment to return, her lips pursing at the sight of me bleeding over her pristine granite countertops. "You look peaked, Scarlett. Are you coming down with something? Please don't tell me you're going to be sick today of all days. We have 23 people coming." "I'm fine," I managed, wrapping my finger in a paper towel. "Just tired." She studied me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between concern and calculation. "Maybe you should take some of those vitamins I've been telling you about. You really don't take care of yourself properly." The irony of her words wouldn't hit me until much later. I pressed on, returning to my preparations. Even as the room seemed to tilt and sway around me, the turkey needed to go in the oven by 8:30 to be ready on time. The pies still needed their finishing touches. The table hadn't been set with the good china. The list stretched endlessly before me while my body screamed for rest. I'd been feeling this way for weeks now, maybe even months. the fatigue that sleep couldn't cure, the mental fog that made simple tasks feel monumentous, the weakness that had me gripping railings and walls for support. But I'd push through it all, attributing it to stress, to overwork, to the general exhaustion of being the family's cornerstone. Taking 2 aspirin from the cabinet, I swallowed them dry and returned to my work. The morning crawled forward, each task requiring more effort than the last. By the time I heard the first guests arriving, every movement felt like I was walking through quicksand. But the turkey was in the oven, the sides were coming together, and the house smelled like Thanksgiving. That's what mattered, wasn't it? Making sure everyone else had their perfect holiday. By 11 a.m., the house had transformed into a circus of arriving relatives and mounting chaos. Cousin Margaret swept in with her 3 kids and a list of dietary restrictions she'd somehow forgotten to mention until now. No gluten for Timothy, she announced, parking herself at the kitchen island. And Lucy's gone vegan since last month. You do have vegan options, right, Scarlett? I gripped the edge of the counter, my vision swimming as I tried to process her words. The room felt like it was rotating slowly, and I had to blink several times to focus on her face. Of course, I heard myself say, though my voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. Uncle George arrived next with his new girlfriend, who looked younger than me. The family's whispers and stares created a tension you could cut with a knife. Through it all, I moved between the kitchen and dining room, setting out appetizers, refilling drinks, making sure everyone felt welcome, while my own body betrayed me with each passing minute. Catherine held court in the living room, loudly complaining to anyone who would listen about the table settings. Scarlett insists on using her mother's old china, she said, her voice carrying into the kitchen. I've told her 1,000 times we should update to something more modern, more sophisticated. But you know how she clings to the past. My hands trembled as I lifted the turkey from the oven to baste it. The roasting pan felt impossibly heavy, like it weighed 100 pounds instead of 25. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cool November air flowing through the open windows. I set the pan back in the oven, but my movements were clumsy, uncoordinated. Jennifer finally arrived at 11:30, bursting through the door in a cloud of expensive perfume and manufactured crisis. The twins immediately started fighting, she announced, depositing Emma and Sophia in the kitchen. Watch them for me, would you? I need a drink and 5 minutes of peace. She disappeared before I could respond, leaving me with 2 7-year-olds who immediately began pulling at my apron, demanding cookies and juice. I reached for the cookie jar on the high shelf, and that's when the floor seemed to shift beneath my feet. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, the edges going dark. Aunt Scarlett, are you okay? Emma's voice sounded like it was coming from miles away. I tried to answer, tried to say I just needed to sit down for a moment, but my mouth wouldn't form the words. The timer for the turkey was going off, its shrill beeping, adding to the chaos in my head. I turned toward the oven, each step feeling like I was walking through molasses. Opening the oven door released a wave of heat that made the dizziness worse. I pulled out the rack, lifting the heavy roasting pan with arms that shook violently. The golden brown turkey glistened perfectly, ready to be transferred to the serving platter. It would have been my best one yet. The pan slipped from my fingers as suddenly as if they'd been made of air. 22 pounds of turkey and scalding drippings crashed onto the tile floor, with a sound that silenced the entire house. I watched it happen in slow motion, my brain unable to send the signals to catch it, to save it, to stop what was coming next. My knees buckled. The granite corner of the island rushed up to meet me, connecting with my temple in an explosion of pain and stars. The last thing I saw before the darkness claimed me was Derek stepping over my body to get to the turkey, trying to salvage what he could from the floor. The food will be ruined, Catherine's voice cut through the fog. All that money wasted. Someone was screaming about blood on their shoes. Jennifer, I realized dimly. My blood. On her new designer shoes. The voices grew distant, fading like a radio being turned down slowly. Then nothing. Just blessed, peaceful nothing. What happened next I learned later from Mrs. Patterson, my elderly neighbor who'd been watching through her kitchen window while washing dishes. She saw me fall, saw my family's reaction, saw how not a single one of them knelt beside me to check if I was breathing. She was the one who called 911, her voice shaking as she told the dispatcher about the young woman unconscious on the kitchen floor, while her family stood around discussing dinner alternatives. The paramedics arrived to find my family already in the dining room, Derek on his phone with a catering company, while Catherine supervised the salvaging of side dishes. My father barely glanced up from his real estate documents when they wheeled the stretcher through. Jennifer asked them to keep their voices down because they were disturbing her twins. "Is anyone riding with her to the hospital?" one of the paramedics asked, looking around the room in disbelief. "We have 23 people here for dinner," Catherine replied, as if that explained everything. "We can't just leave them." Mrs. Patterson grabbed her purse and climbed into the ambulance with me, this 78-year-old woman who'd known me since I was born, showing more concern than my entire family combined. She held my hand during the ride, later telling me she kept talking to me, telling me to hold on, that someone cared, that I wasn't alone. My family returned to their Thanksgiving dinner. They ordered Chinese food to replace the turkey. They toasted with wine I'd selected and paid for. They sat around my dining room table on chairs I'd carefully cleaned, eating off my mother's china that Catherine so despised, and celebrated their gratitude for family. Not one of them called the hospital for 6 hours. Consciousness returned slowly, like surfacing from deep water. First came the sounds: rhythmic beeping, distant voices, the squeak of wheels on linoleum. Then the smells: antiseptic and industrial laundry, the unmistakable scent of hospital. My eyes felt weighted, refusing to open until I forced them, squinting against fluorescent lights that sent spikes of pain through my skull. The clock on the wall read 7:15 p.m. Thanksgiving was over. The room was empty except for the standard hospital furniture and the IV stand beside my bed, its steady drip keeping time with my heartbeat. No flowers, no cards, no family members asleep in uncomfortable chairs. Just me and the machines keeping watch. A nurse appeared in the doorway, her face breaking into a relieved smile when she saw my eyes open. "Oh, good, you're awake, honey. I'm Amy. You gave us quite a scare." She moved with practiced efficiency, checking monitors, adjusting my IV, all while maintaining a stream of gentle chatter. I tried to speak, but my throat felt like sandpaper. Amy quickly helped me sip some water, her hand supporting my head with maternal care. "My family," I managed to croak out. Amy's expression shifted just for a moment before her professional smile returned. "There's been a visitor, a Mrs. Patterson. She's been in the waiting room all day, refused to leave. Such a sweet lady. She said she's your neighbor." All day. My neighbor had been here all day while my family was where? Celebrating, eating, laughing. The thought should have hurt more than it did, but maybe I'd known all along where I stood in their priorities. Amy continued her examination, checking my pupils with a penlight that made me wince. "You hit your head pretty hard, hon. Concussion for sure. But that's actually the least of what we found." Before I could ask what she meant, she was gone, promising to get the doctor. I lay there in the sterile quiet, trying to piece together the fragments of the morning, the exhaustion, the dizziness, the way my body had simply given up. This wasn't normal tiredness. This was something more. My phone sat on the bedside table, screen dark. I reached for it with trembling fingers, unlocking it to find a single text from Jennifer sent 3 hours ago. Turkey was dry anyway. Ordered Chinese instead. "Hope you feel better." That was it. No questions about my condition, no mention of coming to see me, just a casual dismissal of the meal I'd spent days preparing, and a throwaway sentiment about my health. I scrolled through looking for something, anything from my father. Nothing. Catherine. Nothing. Derek. Nothing. Instagram, however, told a different story. Jennifer had posted a carousel of photos from dinner. The family gathered around my dining room table, raising glasses in a toast. Catherine laughing at something Derek said. My father actually looking up from his phone long enough to smile for the camera. The caption read, "So grateful for family time and second chances." Sometimes the best moments come from unexpected changes. I studied each photo, looking for any sign that my absence had been noted, mourned, or even acknowledged. There wasn't one. In fact, scrolling back through Jennifer's feed, through Catherine's, through the family photos from the last 3 years, I realized something that shouldn't have surprised me, but did. I wasn't in any of them. Not a single family photo included me. I was the ghost who cooked their meals, cleaned their messes, and managed their lives. But I wasn't worth documenting. Dr. Martinez arrived as I was still staring at my phone screen. He was younger than I expected, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and an expression that immediately put me on alert. When doctors look that serious, the news is never simple. "Miss Scarlett, I'm Dr. Martinez. How are you feeling?" Like I got hit by a truck, I admitted. He pulled a chair close to my bed, another bad sign. Doctors only sit when they have something significant to say. Your collapse wasn't just from exhaustion, though. That certainly played a part. Your blood work shows severe dehydration, malnutrition, and dangerous anemia. Your body has been running on empty for months, trying to function without proper nutrients or rest. I nodded slowly, processing this. It made sense. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten a full meal or slept through the night. But he wasn't done. The concerning part is what else we found in your system. There are unusual markers, toxins that shouldn't be there. We're running additional tests, but I need to ask you some questions. Have you been taking any medications, sleeping pills, anxiety medication, anything like that? No, I said, confused. Nothing like that, just aspirin sometimes. Vitamins when I remember. He made notes on his tablet, his frown deepening. We'll know more soon. For now, you need rest. Real rest. Your body has been through significant trauma not just from today, but from prolonged stress and neglect. After he left, Mrs. Patterson shuffled in her face, creased with worry. She took my hand in both of her papery skin warm and comforting. "Oh, my dear girl," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "When I saw you fall through my window, I've never moved so fast in my life." "And your family," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "Your family had different priorities." "They're still at dinner," I said. It wasn't a question. She nodded, squeezing my hand tighter. "But I'm here. I've been here all day, and I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone, sweetheart. You remember that." I wanted to cry then, but the tears wouldn't come. Maybe I was too dehydrated, or maybe I'd simply run out of tears for people who didn't deserve them. Either way, I held on to Mrs. Patterson's hand like a lifeline. This woman who owed me nothing but had shown me more care in one day than my family had in years. A notification popped up on my phone. Catherine had posted a story. I clicked on it against my better judgment. It was a video of the dessert table, my pies that I'd made from scratch, arranged beautifully. Her voice narrated, "When life gives you lemons, you make lemon pie." Or in our case, when the hostess has a little spell you make, do with what she prepared in advance. A little spell. That's what my collapse had been reduced to. A minor inconvenience in their Thanksgiving celebration. I deleted the app from my phone and closed my eyes. Mrs. Patterson's hand still holding mine, anchoring me to something real and kind, in a world that suddenly felt tilted off its axis. Dr. Martinez returned the next morning with a thick folder and an even more serious expression. He closed the door behind him and pulled the privacy curtain, creating a cocoon around us. My stomach dropped. Privacy meant bad news, serious news, the kind they don't want other patients overhearing. "Scarlett, I need to share something concerning with you," he began, sitting down again. "Your blood tests came back with some unusual findings. We found high levels of benzodiazepine derivatives in your system. These aren't from any prescription medication. The levels are consistent with chronic ingestion over several months." I stared at him, trying to make sense of his words. "Are you saying I've been taking benzos?" "I don't understand. I haven't taken anything like that." He leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm saying someone has been giving them to you without your knowledge. The pattern suggests regular dosing, likely through food or drink. This would explain your increasing fatigue, confusion, weakness, all the symptoms you've been experiencing." The room seemed to spin again, but this time it wasn't from any drug. Someone had been poisoning me in my own home. The word felt dramatic, ridiculous, even like something from a bad movie. But the evidence was right there in my blood. "Think carefully," Dr. Martinez continued. "Has anyone been consistently giving you food or drinks? Anyone who's had regular access to your meals?" My mind raced back through the last months. Catherine's constant insistence that I drink her special vitamin smoothies for energy. Derek bringing me coffee every morning, always already prepared, always tasting slightly off. But I'd assumed it was just his terrible coffee-making skills. The way I always felt worse after family dinners, but better when I traveled for work conferences. Oh my God. The words came out as a whisper. Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. We need to contact the police. This is assault, possibly attempted murder depending on the dosage and intent. But first I need you to think. Is there any reason someone would want to harm you? The trust fund. The words tumbled out as the pieces clicked into place. My mother's trust fund. $2 million that I inherit on my 35th birthday. That's in 4 months. My father is the trustee now, but he's been pressuring me to sign papers to transfer control. And Catherine, she keeps mentioning my mother's life insurance policy, asking questions about it. The room felt too small, suddenly the walls pressing in as the full scope of what had been happening crashed over me. They hadn't just been neglecting me. They'd been systematically poisoning me, weakening me, trying to either control me or eliminate me entirely. My father's business. I continued, my voice stronger now as anger began to replace shock. He's been having problems. Jennifer mentioned something about bankruptcy proceedings a few weeks ago, but said he'd handled it. And Derek Catherine's son, he became the beneficiary on my life insurance policy. I don't remember signing that change, but my signature is on it. Dr. Martinez was already pulling out his phone. We're getting the police here now. And a social worker. We need to document everything and get you somewhere safe. Mrs. Patterson, I said suddenly. She's been watching. She sees everything from her house. She might have noticed things. As if summoned by her name, Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway holding a manila envelope. I thought you might need these today, dear, she said, her voice steady but her hands shaking slightly. She opened the envelope, spreading photos and handwritten notes across my bed. Dr. Martinez and I leaned in, examining her evidence. There were photos of Catherine on the patio, with her laptop, the screen clearly showing a search for sedatives in food. Another showed Derek carrying small bottles to the garbage bottles that didn't match anything that should have been in our medicine cabinet. I've been documenting things for months, Mrs. Patterson explained. Ever since you started getting sick right after Catherine moved in. My late husband was a private investigator. He taught me to trust my instincts and keep records. There were pages of observations, dates, and times, when Catherine prepared my food, when I appeared disoriented or weak, when family members made concerning comments. One note from just 2 weeks ago chilled me to the bone. Overheard Catherine on phone saying Scarlett won't last another year and then laughing. The hospital social worker arrived, then a formidable woman named Patricia Sullivan, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at the evidence spread across my bed and immediately took charge. We're moving you to a secure room, she said. No visitors without approval. I'm getting a detective here within the hour. And we're going to make sure these people never hurt you again. Detective Rachel Morgan arrived 40 minutes later, bringing with her a forensics team and a determination that made me feel protected for the first time in months. She specialized in family financial crimes and had seen too many cases like mine. You're lucky, she said, though the word felt wrong. Many victims don't survive long enough to get help. Your body's been fighting hard to keep you alive despite what they've been doing to you. We spent the next 3 hours going through everything. The detective had warrants issued for the house specifically for Catherine's smoothie ingredients, the coffee Derek had been making, and any medications in the home. She also got a warrant for financial records, both mine and my father's. Meanwhile, Patricia Sullivan had been digging into my accounts, and what she found made my blood run cold. $50,000 had been withdrawn from my investment account over the last 6 months, all with my alleged signature. An application for disability had been filed in my name just 2 weeks ago, listing Catherine as my care provider. My medical power of attorney had been changed to Catherine without my knowledge. They were setting up for the long con, Detective Morgan explained. Either you'd become too incapacitated to manage your affairs, and they'd take control, or you'd die, and they'd inherit everything. The trust fund, the life insurance, your investment accounts. We're looking at conspiracy, attempted murder, fraud, and theft. Mrs. Patterson squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, dear. I should have said something sooner. You saved my life, I told her, meaning every word. If you hadn't called the ambulance, if you hadn't documented everything, I'd probably be dead by Christmas. The detective's phone rang then. She listened, her expression darkening with each word. They found the drug, she said after hanging up. hidden in Catherine's bathroom. Enough benzodiazepine to kill someone if given in the right doses. And Derek's computer shows searches for inheritance law, medical power of attorney, and how long before someone is declared incompetent. She paused, looking at me with something between pity and admiration. There's more. Catherine's previous husband died 5 years ago under suspicious circumstances. Heart failure at age 52, despite no history of heart problems. She inherited everything. The case was never properly investigated. The room fell silent as we all absorbed this. I wasn't Catherine's first victim, just her latest. And my father had either been complicit or willfully blind to what his new wife was doing to his daughter. "We're going to arrest them," Detective Morgan said. "But I need your help. We need more evidence recordings if possible. Are you strong enough to help us catch them in the act?" I thought about all the mornings I'd struggled to get out of bed, all the times I doubted my own mind, when the fog wouldn't clear all the family gatherings where I'd been treated like hired help, while being slowly murdered. "Yes," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I'm ready." 3 days later, I was released from the hospital with a wire taped to my chest and a determination burning in my gut that no drug could dim. Detective Morgan had coached me carefully on what to say, what to do, how to act weak and confused enough to maintain their confidence while gathering the evidence we needed. Mrs. Patterson drove me home, her ancient Buick, moving through familiar streets that now felt foreign and threatening. Police surveillance was already in place, unmarked cars positioned strategically around the neighborhood. I wasn't alone, but I'd never felt more isolated as I walked through my own front door. Catherine emerged from the kitchen immediately, her face a mask of false concern. "Oh, Scarlett, you're home. We were so worried. You should have called. We would have picked you up." Her arms came around me in a hug that made my skin crawl. I forced myself to lean into it, to play the part of the weak, grateful daughter. "The hospital said you called," I mumbled, making my voice intentionally slow and thick. "But I don't remember." "You poor thing," she cooed, leading me to the kitchen. "You've been through so much. Here, let me make you one of my special smoothies. You need the vitamins and nutrients to recover." I watched her pull out the blender. The protein powder, the vitamin bottles that I now knew contained nothing close to vitamins. She moved with practiced efficiency, her back to me, as she added each ingredient. The wire against my skin captured every sound, every movement. "Make sure you drink it all," she said, handing me the glass. "Doctor's orders, remember. We need to build your strength back up." I lifted the glass to my lips, pretending to sip while actually letting the liquid barely touch my closed lips. It tasted bitter underneath the banana and honey she'd added to mask it. How many mornings had I drunk this poison thinking I was taking care of myself? My father appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You're back," he said simply. "We need to talk about those papers. The ones about the trust. It's important we get them signed before your birthday." "I'm so confused lately, Dad," I said, swaying slightly on my feet. "The hospital said something about my blood. Something wrong with it. Do you know what they meant?" He exchanged a look with Catherine that told me everything I needed to know. He was fully aware. My own father was complicit in my attempted murder for money. The betrayal cut deeper than any poison could. "The doctors don't know what they're talking about," Catherine said smoothly. "You've just been overworking yourself. That's why we filed for disability for you, so you can rest and let us take care of everything." Derek walked in, then casual as ever, grabbing an apple from the bowl on the counter. "Hey, Scarlett! Feeling better? Mom's smoothies are like medicine, right? Better than anything the hospital can give you." The recording equipment was getting everything. Every damning word, every admission of guilt wrapped in false concern. But they weren't done yet. We needed more. "The papers," my father said again, pulling a folder from his briefcase. "Just sign here and here. It's routine stuff transferring the trustee position so we can better manage your inheritance when it comes. You're clearly not in a position to handle complex financial matters." I picked up the pen with a shaking hand, pretending to struggle with holding it. "What happens if I don't sign?" Catherine's mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of cold calculation in her eyes. "Well, if something were to happen to you before your birthday, the trust would revert to your father anyway." And with Derek as your life insurance beneficiary, the family would be taken care of. But let's not think about such morbid things. There it was, the threat wrapped in concern. The wire would have caught it all. I think I need to lie down, I said, setting the pen aside. My head hurts so much. After you sign, my father said, his voice harder now. This needs to be done today, Scarlett. We've waited long enough. The front door burst open before I could respond. Detective Morgan entered with 6 officers, their weapons-drawn badges visible. Nobody move. Richard Lawson, Catherine Lawson, Derek Mitchell. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and theft. Catherine tried to run to the sink, presumably to dump the smoothie evidence, but an officer caught her arm. The smoothie glass was carefully bagged as evidence. Derek lunged for his laptop on the counter, trying to wipe it, but another officer stopped him, securing the device that would later reveal months of incriminating searches and communications. My father just stood there, his face aging 10 years in 10 seconds. You don't understand, he said. The business, the debts. We weren't really going to. We just needed. Save it for your lawyer, Detective Morgan said as they cuffed him. Jennifer arrived then, having been called by Catherine, and walked straight into the scene. She took one look at the police, at our family in handcuffs, at me standing there with detectives, and she broke. She started sobbing, not for what they'd done, but for what it meant for her. I knew she admitted through her tears. I knew something was wrong, but I thought if I just stayed quiet, I'd get my share. I have the twins to think about. College funds, private school. I needed that money too. The detective assigned an officer to take her statement. While she wouldn't be charged as severely as the others, her admission of knowledge and failure to report would cost her dearly, including temporary loss of custody of her daughters. As they led my family away, Catherine turned back to look at me. Her mask was completely gone now, replaced by pure venom. You always were too much like your mother, she spat. Too trusting, too weak. My mother was poisoned too, wasn't she? I said. It wasn't cancer that killed her. It was you and Dad. Catherine's smile was answer enough. The officers pulled her away before she could respond, but I saw my father's shoulders slump in defeat. Later investigation would prove my suspicion correct. My mother's death had been the first murder, setting the stage for everything that followed. Mrs. Patterson appeared at my side, wrapping her arm around me as my legs threatened to give out. This time, though, it wasn't from drugs. It was from the weight of truth, the relief of survival, and the grief of losing a family I'd never really had. The house felt different with them gone. Quieter, but also cleaner somehow, as if their presence had been a poison all its own, seeping into the walls and furniture. I walked through each room with Detective Morgan pointing out where they'd prepared my daily doses of death, where they'd discussed my demise, where they'd calculated the value of my life in dollars and cents. In Catherine's room, investigators found journals detailing her plans, including notes from her previous husband's death. She'd refined her technique with me, learning from past mistakes. The journals would become key evidence in both cases. Derek's computer revealed even more. Emails between him and Catherine discussing dosages, timeline, and backup plans if I survived too long. There were spreadsheets calculating how much they'd gain from my death with different scenarios based on when I died. If I made it to my birthday, they'd get less. If I died before, they'd get everything. My father's office held financial records showing his empire was in complete collapse. He owed millions in bad investments and failed developments. My inheritance was his only hope of avoiding bankruptcy and prison for fraud. He'd been stealing from my accounts to pay debts, always planning to replace it with the bigger prize of my trust fund. The evidence was overwhelming. By the time Detective Morgan finished collecting everything, there was no doubt about convictions. They would all go to prison. My family had conspired to murder me for money, just as they'd murdered my mother before me. The trial took 6 months, during which I lived in a different kind of recovery. The physical healing came first, my body slowly releasing the toxins they'd pumped into me for so long. But the emotional healing was harder. How do you process that your entire family wanted you dead? How do you trust anyone again when the people who were supposed to love you most were slowly murdering you? Mrs. Patterson became my anchor during those months. She attended every court date with me, holding my hand as I testified about the morning smoothies, the evening coffees, the family dinners that left me barely able to stand. She was there when Catherine was sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder, plus additional time for her first husband's death, which was now being properly investigated. Derek received 10 years for conspiracy and fraud, his dreams of easy money replaced by a prison cell. The jury had no sympathy for a healthy 31-year-old man who'd chosen to poison his stepsister rather than get a job. My father's sentence hit the hardest, not because it was the longest at 12 years, but because when the judge read it, he looked at me with tears in his eyes. Not tears of remorse for trying to kill me, but tears of self-pity for getting caught. Even facing prison, he couldn't see me as anything more than a failed resource and investment that hadn't paid out. Jennifer got the lightest sentence, 2 years probation for failure to report a crime and conspiracy after the fact. She lost custody of the twins temporarily, with Paul filing for divorce and full custody. During her testimony, she admitted she'd noticed my decline, but chose to believe it would mean more money for her daughter's future. She'd traded her sister's life for the promise of private school tuition. The family home was seized as part of the criminal proceedings, evidence of crimes committed within its walls. I didn't fight it. I couldn't imagine living there again, preparing meals in the kitchen, where they'd prepared my death, sleeping in the room where I'd fought to wake up each poisoned morning. With the inheritance, my mother had actually left me, not the inflated amount my father had always claimed to justify his theft. I bought a small cottage by the ocean. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with windows that looked out onto the waves. It was everything the family mansion hadn't been: warm, genuine, and mine. Mrs. Patterson helped me move in, directing the movers with the efficiency of a general, while making sure I didn't overexert myself. We hung pictures from my childhood, the few that didn't include the people who'd tried to kill me. My mother featured prominently, her smile now seeming protective rather than just mist. I returned to nursing once my health was fully restored, but with a different approach. I set boundaries. I took breaks. I ate regular meals that no one else had prepared. My colleagues noticed the change, immediately commenting on how much healthier and happier I looked. If only they knew what it had taken to get there. 1 year after that terrible Thanksgiving, I decided to host the holiday again, but differently this time. I invited Mrs. Patterson and her extended family, 3 daughters, 5 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren, who'd been trying to convince her to move closer to them. When they saw how she'd saved my life, how she'd become my chosen family, they stopped pressuring her to leave and started visiting more often. I also invited other survivors I'd met through support groups during my recovery. Women and men who'd escaped their own family betrayals, who understood that DNA doesn't make someone trustworthy, that blood relations can be the deepest source of harm. We called ourselves the Orphans Table. Though many of us had living relatives, we were orphaned by choice, by necessity, by survival. That Thanksgiving, my cottage was filled with 27 people who'd chosen to be there. No one criticized the turkey or demanded special arrangements. Everyone contributed something, whether it was a dish, a story, or just their presence. Mrs. Patterson made her famous apple pie, the one she'd been bringing to my family's gatherings for years, but which they'd never properly appreciated. As we went around the table sharing what we were grateful for, the answers were both heartbreaking and beautiful. Grateful for surviving, grateful for new beginnings, grateful for the family we choose rather than the family we're given. When it was my turn, I looked at the faces around my table, faces of people who'd shown me more genuine care in 1 year than my blood family had in 34, and I knew exactly what to say. I'm grateful for the truth, I said, even when it nearly killed me to learn it. I'm grateful for the strength to survive what was supposed to destroy me. And I'm grateful for all of you who prove every day that family isn't about blood or obligation or inheritance. It's about choosing to show up, choosing to care, choosing to love without conditions or calculations. Mrs. Patterson raised her glass of apple cider, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. To chosen families, she said, may they be the families we deserve. We toasted to that 27 survivors around a table that had no poison, no lies, no hidden agendas. Just people who'd learned the hard way that sometimes the most dangerous predators share your last name, eat at your table, and call their cruelty love. The cottage by the ocean became known as a safe house of sorts. Friends of friends would call saying they needed somewhere to stay while escaping their own toxic families. I always had a bed available, a hot meal ready, and no questions asked beyond, "Are you safe now?" My mother's inheritance, the money they'd tried to kill me for, became a fund for survivors to start over. I started a foundation with the remaining money, calling it the Truth and Toxins Fund. We helped people get toxicology tests when they suspected poisoning. We provided legal support for those fighting family financial abuse. We offered safe housing for those who needed to disappear while building court cases. In 3 years, we helped 47 people escape situations like mine. 47 people who might have become statistics instead of survivors. The last time I saw any of my family was at my father's parole hearing 5 years into his sentence. He'd been a model prisoner, his lawyer argued, and with his age and health conditions, he deserved early release. They asked me to speak as his victim. I stood before the parole board and told them about the mother who'd never gotten justice, about the daughter who'd nearly joined her, about the father who'd chosen money over both of us. I showed them pictures from my hospital stay, the test results showing toxic levels of drugs in my system, the financial records showing systematic theft. But most importantly, I told them about trust. When you poison someone's food, I said you don't just poison their body. You poison their ability to trust the most basic human interactions. Every meal becomes suspicious. Every gesture of kindness gets questioned. Every relationship gets tested against the possibility of betrayal. My father didn't just try to kill me. He tried to kill my ability to exist safely in the world. That's a life sentence I'm serving. He should serve his full sentence too. The parole was denied. As they let him out, my father looked at me one last time. For a moment, I thought I saw something like recognition in his eyes, maybe finally seeing me as a person, rather than a financial opportunity. But then he turned away, and I knew nothing had changed. Some people are incapable of love that doesn't come with a price tag. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt the last chains of obligation fall away. I'd been programmed from birth to serve my family, to sacrifice for them, to accept crumbs of affection as payment for endless service. The poison they'd fed me was just the physical manifestation of what they'd been doing my whole life, slowly killing the parts of me that existed for myself rather than for them. But here's what they didn't count on. The human body is remarkably resilient. It can filter out toxins, repair damage, build immunity. And the human spirit is even stronger. It can survive betrayal, overcome trauma, and learn to trust again, just more carefully, more consciously, with better boundaries and clearer vision. That Thanksgiving when I collapsed was the worst and best day of my life. Worst because it nearly killed me. Best because it revealed the truth that was actually killing me. Sometimes we need to fall completely apart to see what's been breaking us all along. Sometimes we need to lose everything we thought we had to find what we actually deserve. Now at 41, I can look back on that 22-pound turkey crashing to the floor as the sound of my liberation. Every family photo I'm not in is evidence of my escape. Every holiday they spend in prison is a holiday I spend with people who actually love me. Every day I wake up without poison in my veins is a day they failed to steal from me. The cottage by the ocean is full of life now. Mrs. Patterson, now 85 lives in the guest house we built in the backyard. She says it's to help me, but really, I can't imagine life without her gentle presence, her witness to my survival, her proof that family can be born from kindness rather than blood. We have Sunday dinners, Thursday coffee, and every Thanksgiving we host our ever-growing chosen family. Sometimes new survivors ask me if I forgive them. My father, Catherine, Derek, even Jennifer. The answer is complex. I forgive them in the sense that I don't carry active hatred that would poison my own life. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean allowing them back into my life. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. Forgiveness for me means freeing myself from the obligation to keep suffering because of what they did. The foundation has grown beyond what I imagined. We have a staff now, proper offices, relationships with hospitals and law enforcement. We've testified before Congress about family financial abuse and medical poisoning. Catherine's case became a textbook example, literally appearing in forensic textbooks as a case study in chronic poisoning for financial gain. Last month, a young woman called our hotline. She was 28, exhausted all the time, confused, weak. Her stepmother had been making her special protein shakes for her health. The parallels were chilling. We got her tested immediately. The results showed exactly what we feared: benzodiazepine poisoning. She's safe now. Her stepmother arrested her, life saved, because my story made the news, and she recognized the symptoms. Every person we save feels like a victory, not just for them, but for my mother, who didn't get the chance to escape. I sometimes wonder if she suspected, if she felt the poison taking hold but couldn't prove it, couldn't find help, couldn't imagine that the man she'd married would kill her for money. I'll never know, but I can make sure other people don't die wondering. The doctor who saved me, Dr. Martinez, now serves on our foundation board. He told me once that in 30 years of medicine, he'd never seen a case like mine where the victim survived long enough to get justice. My body had been fighting the poison for so long that it had built up a tolerance, buying me just enough time for that final collapse to happen in front of a witness who cared enough to call for help. If I'd collapsed an hour later after Mrs. Patterson had left for her doctor's appointment, I would have died on that kitchen floor while my family ate Thanksgiving dinner in the next room. That's the thought that sometimes wakes me at 3 a.m. Not that they tried to kill me, but how close they came to succeeding. How many mornings I almost didn't wake up. How many times I dismissed my body's warnings as stress or overwork. How many poisoned smoothies I drank thinking I was taking care of myself. But then I remember Mrs. Patterson's hand in mine in that ambulance. I remember Detective Morgan's determination to get justice. I remember the survivors around my Thanksgiving table, proof that you can rebuild after your foundation has been destroyed. I remember that I'm here alive telling this story when they wanted me silent forever. The cottage has a security system now, cameras and alarms and safety measures I never thought I'd need. Not because I think they'll come back. They're all still in prison except Jennifer, who moved across the country and changed her name. But because hypervigilance is one of the prices of survival. Every survivor I know has their version of it. We check our food log, our doors document everything, trust slowly. It's not paranoia when someone really did try to kill you. People sometimes ask if I'm lonely without my biological family. The answer is no. I'm not lonely. I'm free. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone is a choice, a peaceful state of self-sufficiency. Being lonely is what I was when I was surrounded by family who saw me as nothing more than a servant and eventual inheritance. I was loneliest at those Thanksgiving dinners where I cooked for 20 people who wouldn't notice if I disappeared until the dishes needed washing. Now my life is full of genuine connection, meaningful work, and the deep satisfaction of turning trauma into purpose. The foundation isn't just about saving lives. It's about proving that survivors can thrive, that chosen families can be stronger than blood, that sometimes the best thing that can happen is losing everything you thought you needed. When I think about what I'm grateful for, it's not the inheritance or the cottage or even the justice, though all those things matter. What I'm most grateful for is the morning I wake up and make my own breakfast, knowing exactly what's in it, trusting that it will nourish rather than harm me. I'm grateful for the friends who check in, not because they want something, but because they care. I'm grateful for Mrs. Patterson's knock on my door, always gentle, always welcome. But mostly I'm grateful for the truth that Thanksgiving revealed, the truth that I was never really part of that family. I was staff. They didn't have to pay a resource to be exploited, a problem to be solved, when the solution could profit them. That truth, horrible as it was to learn, set me free to find real family, real love, real life. My story went viral after the trial, shared millions of times with comments from people who recognized their own toxic families in mine. The title was always some variation of "Woman Discovers Family Poisoning Her for Inheritance." But that's not how I see it. To me, the story is: woman survives, woman escapes, woman rebuilds, woman thrives. Because that's what we do, those of us who survive our families. We don't just escape, we transform. We take the poison they fed us and turn it into medicine for others. We take the isolation they forced on us and build communities of survivors. We take the inheritance they tried to steal and use it to save lives they would have taken. Every Thanksgiving now, when I stand in my kitchen preparing food for people who truly love me, I think about that 22-pound turkey hitting the floor, the crash that seemed like disaster but was actually salvation, the mess that revealed the truth, the fall that saved my life. Some people say blood is thicker than water, but they're misquoting the original saying. The full quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose are stronger than the bonds we're born into. The family we create from love and trust and mutual respect is more real than the family that shares our DNA, but not our values, our name, but not our hearts." That Thanksgiving, I was rushed to the ER unconscious while my family celebrated without me. What the doctor told them shattered their perfect holiday image, but what he told me saved my life. The truth, painful as it was, became my doorway to freedom. The poison meant to kill me became the evidence that convicted them. The family that tried to destroy me became the catalyst for finding my real family. And now every time someone calls our foundation, every time we save another life, every time a survivor finds their chosen family, I know my mother is somewhere finally at peace, knowing that her daughter not only survived, but turned that survival into salvation for others. That's my story. Not a tragedy, though it has tragic elements. Not a cautionary tale, though it certainly warns. It's a story of resurrection, of choosing life when death was being spooned into your morning smoothie, of finding family among strangers, when strangers lived among your family. If you're reading this and something resonates, if you're tired all the time and can't explain why, if your family seems invested in your weakness rather than your strength, please get tested. Please reach out. Please know that the family you're born into doesn't have to be the family you die for. Sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to stop trying to save relationships that are killing you. That Thanksgiving, I lost my biological family, but found my true self. I lost my childhood home, but found my sanctuary. I lost the people who shared my blood, but found the people who share my values. I nearly lost my life, but in fighting for it, I found it was worth more than any inheritance, worth more than family approval, worth more than maintaining the illusion of belonging somewhere I was never truly welcome. Now I belong to myself first. And from that self-belonging, I've built connections that are genuine relationships that are reciprocal, and a family that doesn't require me to die for them to thrive. That's the real inheritance my mother left me. Not just the money, but the chance to discover that love shouldn't come with a price tag. Family shouldn't require sacrifice of self. And sometimes the best thing that can happen is the worst thing you can imagine. Because when that 22-pound turkey hit the floor, when I collapsed in the kitchen, where I'd served others for decades, when my family stepped over my body to save dinner instead of saving me, I was given the gift of truth. And truth, it turns out, is the antidote to every poison they fed me. Looking back now, I see that my body knew what my mind couldn't accept. It shut down rather than continue accepting poison disguised as care. It collapsed rather than continue standing for people who wanted me to fall. It saved me from them by refusing to let me continue serving them. So thank you to my body for its wisdom. Thank you to Mrs. Patterson for her witness. Thank you to Dr. Martinez for his suspicion. Thank you to Detective Morgan for her dedication. Thank you to every survivor who shared their story and made me feel less alone. Thank you to my chosen family for showing me what love looks like without conditions. And yes, in the strangest way, thank you to Catherine for being so greedy. She got careless to Derek for being so lazy. He got sloppy to my father for being so desperate. He got caught to Jennifer for being so weak, she confessed. Thank you for being so committed to killing me that you left evidence everywhere. Thank you for underestimating both my body's resilience and my will to live. Because here I am years later, not just alive, but living. Not just surviving, but thriving. Not just free from you, but free to help others escape their own versions of you. Every life we save through the foundation is a reminder that I lived. Every survivor who finds their chosen family is proof that blood isn't destiny. Every Thanksgiving with my real family is a celebration not of what I lost, but of what I found. What did I find? I found that home isn't a house you grew up in, but the place where you're safe to be yourself. Family isn't who you're related to, but who relates to you. Love isn't obligation, but choice made fresh each day to show up for each other, honestly and kindly. Strength isn't never falling, but getting up when someone's tried to poison you back down. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, but simply living well, living free, living proof that some things can't be killed, no matter how much poison you pour into them. So if you're watching this wondering if your exhaustion is more than exhaustion, if your family's concern feels more like control, if you're being asked to sign papers you don't understand for reasons that don't make sense, listen to your body. It knows. It's trying to tell you something. Don't wait for the collapse. Don't wait for the 22-pound turkey to hit the floor. Don't wait for someone else to call the ambulance. Save yourself. Choose yourself. Trust yourself. Because the family that really loves you will never ask you to die for them slowly or otherwise. They'll want you alive, healthy, strong, free. They'll celebrate your independence, not your dependence. They'll feed you real food, not poison disguised as care. That's all I wanted to share. Thank you for watching and listening to my story. If it saves even one life, if it helps even one person recognize the poison in their own smoothie, then every moment of pain was worth purpose. If you found value in this story, if it opened your eyes to something in your own life, please comment below and share your thoughts. Have you ever experienced betrayal from those closest to you? How did you find the strength to rebuild? Your stories matter too, and sharing them helps all of us feel less alone. Please hit the like button if this resonated with you, and subscribe to hear more stories of survival and triumph. Share this with anyone who might need to hear that family isn't always family, and sometimes the best thing you can do is choose yourself. Thank you for being here, for witnessing my truth, and for being part of my chosen family of survivors. May you always trust your instincts. May your meals be poison-free. And may your holidays be filled with people who truly want you at the table, not under it.